The drums of war are beating again after last weekend's attack on Saudi oil facilities. We're already seeing reports calling this a Pearl Harbor moment. Yes, you heard me correctly. And never one to let a crisis go to waste, Secretary Mike Pompeo immediately came out pointing the finger at Iran, even though Houthi militants in Yemen had already taken responsibility for the attack. All of this sounds so familiar, an attack being weaponized to try and kickstart an interventionist war. Let's take Syria for example. You'll remember the alleged chemical attack in Ghouta where the government allegedly fired chemical weapons at opposition rebels. You'll remember the retaliation by US warships. But what you might not know is that the boy at the centre of this attack, whose image went around the world, had a very different story to tell. He and his father told journalists afterwards that this was actually a staged fictional attack. They were taken from their houses by rebel forces and hosed down on camera in dramatic style along with others. It was a setup by rebels who wanted to spark a NATO intervention in a war they were losing. But few, if any, Western outlets reported the boy's story. Now, there's no suggestion that the Saudi attack this weekend was a setup, but there's plenty of reason to believe that war hawks will try to take full advantage to advance their policy goals of toppling the Iranian regime. After devastating wars in Iraq and Libya, built on the most sickening lies about fictional weapons of mass destruction, these people have not learned their lessons. John Bolton's departure was a hopeful sign of change in US foreign policy, and thankfully Trump has avoided starting any wars, unlike Obama and Bush. But with knee-jerk reactions like that of Pompeo, war can never be ruled out. Why is it that the US continues backing Saudi Arabia, the biggest exporter of Islamic terror and extremism around the world, with their funding of ISIS? Even Hillary Clinton, a great friend of the House of Saud, admitted that fact. Why does the US sell billions in arms to them, killing innocent Yemeni people every single day? The Sunni axis of countries led by Saudi Arabia and with allies like Israel and NATO are responsible for infinitely more bloodshed than the Shia countries they oppose, like Iran. But this doesn't really matter when the main concern is actually oil money and the influence of Israel in US foreign policy. These two factors are clearly at play when Donald Trump stands beside Saudi leaders and, contrary to all the facts, calls Iran, not Saudi Arabia, the biggest sponsor of terror abroad. Before the election, he had said the opposite, calling out Saudi Arabia as the true kings of terror. We can only hope, however, that Trump continues to resist calls for another war. The world should have learned enough from Iraq and Libya to know it won't end well. As for the millions of innocent dead, they're little more than slight collateral damage to the warmongers who sit at home safely whilst wreaking havoc abroad.